If you watched my review of Lost in Blue 2 for the Nintendo DS, you'll see that I enjoyed the game a lot. While the video goes into further detail as to why I liked the game as much as I did, one thing that I didn't mention that I particularly enjoyed was the more realistic and grounded setting of the game. There were no zombies or other supernatural elements involved in the story, but was an interesting and engaging experience nonetheless. Which is why the game I'll be talking about in today's video caught my attention. The Disaster Report series has an interesting history outside of Japan. Known as the Taizetsume Toshi in its home country, when the first game was released in the US and Europe, many of the characters' hair colors were changed to blonde, in the belief that would better appeal to Western audiences. While I'm not sure if the hair color change affected sales all that much, the game was nonetheless successful enough overseas for the sequel to be released internationally, this time with the title being changed to Raw Danger. The third game didn't see a release outside of Japan, but the fourth and latest entry, Summer Memories, is here for non-Japanese players to enjoy. Before you even get to choose your character, you're greeted with your first characterization choice. You'll be encountering a lot of these throughout the game, with some of them giving you moral or immoral points. However, these points don't affect the overall story, so you don't have to worry about screwing yourself over by giving a wrong response. Still, it's interesting to have a bit of personalization to your character and how they react to what's happening around them, even if it doesn't change things very much. Then, it's not long until the action begins. You're just having a normal expedition into the city until an enormous earthquake hits with little warning, devastating everything around you. Worst day trip ever. Luckily, you survive unharmed, and there's not much left to do here now except to find a way home. And given the situation you're in, that's a lot easier said than done. The regions you travel across are all pretty small, but each of them look unique from one another. One minute you'll be finding your way through a crowded street, and the next you'll be in a lonely subway station, hoping the ceiling doesn't collapse on top of you while you attempt to reach the other side. And speaking of which, one of the many dangers in the game are the periodic aftershocks that will occur. A lot of the times, your best course of action is to brace yourself on the ground so you don't topple over and hurt yourself. But you have to be quick and careful when doing so, lest you find yourself unfortunately placed beneath something that can crush you instantly. Additionally, you also have a hunger, thirst, stress, and bathroom meter that the game encourages you to take care of. However, none of these seem to have much detriment to your character, except for maybe putting their hand over their stomach if they're hungry. And it certainly doesn't stop you from hauling ass when you run. Your main challenge of the game is figuring out what you need to do in order to reach the next area. You do this by exploring your surroundings, talking to people, and helping them with their problems. So as you can see, this is much more of an adventure game than it is a survival one. And like any good adventure game, there's a fair chance you'll come across a point at least once where you'll be running around like an idiot trying to figure out what you're supposed to do next until you find the solution that should have been obvious to you. Also, while the setting takes place in a realistic modern-day city in Japan during a realistic natural disaster, the story takes some pretty crazy turns when you're not expecting it, which definitely kept me interested as to what the game would throw at me next. And on top of that, you can collect various articles of clothing to dress your characters up in, which is always fun. But while the game is novel in concept and setting, it does stumble with some technical execution. I hadn't encountered any glitches, but the camera angles in tight spaces are oftentimes awkward and frustrating to work around. There's also a level where you have to plow through a flooded region with a lifeboat, and the controls for that aren't very polished to say the least. Another issue I had was needing to be in just the right spot in order to activate some hitboxes, which was even more difficult whenever there was more than one target. Loading times between each of the levels are also a bit on the long side, despite none of them being big at all. There are also frequent, albeit much briefer loading times within the level itself before a cutscene begins, which also shows a bit of rendering issues. While the game is far from broken, these problems are difficult to ignore. That being said, it's hard to dislike Disaster Report 4 despite its technical shortcomings. While I think the survival mechanics definitely could have been utilized more, I still had a lot of fun looking through every nook and cranny in the levels, hoping to find what step I should take next, or if there was a hidden collectible to pick up. Not only did the story keep me guessing as to what crazy encounter would happen next, but I also wanted to see how the recurring characters' stories would play out. And despite some of the more surprising moments of the story, it was also realistically shocking when people became victims of natural casualties without warning. Let's just say not even children are spared in this game. While the game definitely has its problems from a technical angle, if you enjoy adventure games, the Disaster Report 4 might just be worth a look. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click like and subscribe if you want to see more.